Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the creator of Tank McGregor, Reys Garza, and the illustrator for Death Wish, Kieran Quinn, here to promote batch number 4 with lesser-known comics on Kickstarter. Hey, welcome, Ray. Welcome, Kieran.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, thank you for joining me today. But outside my introduction, who is Reys Garza and Kieran Quinn in their own words? In your own words, I should say.
Do you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Just gonna copy what I say, aren't you?
Yeah.
So Reys Garza. I am the writer illustrator of Tank McGregor. I have been drawing my whole life, but I've only recently started putting my feet, dipping my toes into the water of comic books and comic book creation. I have a background in film and filmmaking. I used to do a lot of shorts and even dabble in a few productions here and there. But after a while, it started getting harder and harder to get my own personal video and film projects off the ground because of money issues, or just there wasn't enough people to feel passionate about your work, the projects that you want to get off the ground. But I still had all these stories and I still needed a creative outlet. So I just started taking all my scripts and my stories and I started putting them into sequential art. And that's how I sort of got into the whole comic book phase of my life.
And what about you, Kieran?
Well, I too have been drawing for pretty much my whole life. And this is my only recently did I start working on comics. I went to school for art. And I've always been working on comics like in an unofficial manner, where like working on my own stories and things, but never to, publish or anything like that. So when I moved to the city, I live in Brooklyn. I started trying to do art as like a way of income, and realized that that's much more difficult than it seemed. So I took a job as a contractor, and I've done art on the side for the last like 10, 11 years. And so when I was given the opportunity to do some art, some comics from a friend of mine who like handed me a script and said, I want you to work on this. That's how I got involved with Mark at Lesser Known Comics. And then he loved what he saw and said, hey, I want you to work on something with me. So he, handed me the script for Death Wish. So that's kind of how I got here.
Well, can you both tell our audience what both of your comics are about? So what is, I guess, Tank McGregor about, and what is Death Wish about?
So Tank McGregor is a 120-page graphic novel, science fiction, action comedy. It's about an intergalactic bounty hunter who is kind of down on his luck. He doesn't get a lot of jobs, and the jobs he does get, he doesn't get paid a lot for them. Does that sound familiar to anyone? So one day he gets an assignment, a job to go hunt down a recently escaped pleasure bot who just gained sentience. So she thinks she's human. So she woke up and suddenly she realized, I'm a sex bot. Oh my God, but I'm a human. So she escaped and went on a murderous rampage. So it's up to Tank McGregor to hunt her down and bring her to justice. And it's got like high sci-fi themes, but it really sort of like turns them on their head. I mean, it's very funny, and it's sort of like my wife calls it Cowboy Bebop meets Futurama, which I think is a pretty good description. So I'll use her pitch for it. But yeah, that's what that is.
Cool. For Death Wish, it's a racing comic. It's kind of like a goofy, like over the top like action race. I don't we kind of mix. It's a mix of like Speed Racer and Mad Max. So it's just like a lot of like demolition derby, and I don't know. It's over the top and a lot of fun. The idea behind it is getting like I don't know. I don't know how to say it.
Well, from what I've seen, what you said is Speed Racer mixed with Mad Max, it kind of does make sense. It's very animated. I like was it like watercolor and marker? That's what it kind of appeared.
Yeah. So everything I do is traditional. So except for the cover, which, oh my God, I'm sorry. Everything I do is traditional. So yeah, like all my interiors and things, they're all watercolor. Because it's like the easiest, quickest way for me to do art, and like I think the most like freeing way of like putting color on a page. But I did do the cover, and that's digital, and it took me like, I don't know, 10 times longer than it should have. Because I mean, even doing, okay, here, this is the original pieces. So,
oh wow,
I did 11 by 17, and I did it with ink, and then I scanned them in. So this took me like no time, and then coloring it took me like, I don't know, probably a week. And because I don't know how to color on my computer. And if I had just done it watercolor, it would have taken me like, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So, but it has a cleaner look. It's got a nice clean look. Like that's the way I feel like a lot of comics look. So it kind of catches your eye. And then when you open the book, you're like, oh, that's different. I like that.
So I guess what is it about the process of working in I guess a traditional medium versus a digital one that you prefer so much? Like what is it about it that you love so much?
Traditional, just like it leaves the mistakes on the page. And it to me, like, because that's how I've always worked, it's just like I know where the lines are going, and I know like how I want it to look. And when you draw a line as straight as you can, but it's not a straight line, it just has character. And when I work digitally, like the cover, it's like every time you're drawing the line, you're making sure everything's perfect. And I think that's kind of what slows me down. But I also like to work faster. And I think that I like having like the paper in front of me, because everything is like physical and it's right there. And then when I'm done, I can like show you the physical copy. And I don't think I get that same kind of feeling when I've worked digitally as well. It's like, oh, I can show it to you on my phone, or I can send it to you in an email or something, text message, but it doesn't have the same feel to it, where, even if you printed it, it would be like a different, I don't know, it's different.
Yeah, it's not, I think it kind of changes in a way what you've drawn versus when you print it out. It look different. It feels different. It's not the same anymore. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But Ray, so how was your process, like your creative process throughout when you created Tank McGregor. So like an idea in your head to flushing it out to now promoting it as a complete work.
I think initially the very first instance of even it becoming somewhat of a grain of an idea was I used to, well, I still do, but I used to play a lot of Xbox Live with my friends back in college. And one of my friends, a gamer tag, his name was literally Tank McGregor. And I asked him where he got that from because I thought it was a really cool name. His name was Frank. So he was the first, that's where Tank came from. It's like Frank the Tank. And McGregor, he just thought it sounded funny, or he thought it sounded cool. So he put McGregor and he had no point behind it. And then just years later, when I was dabbling with the idea of drawing a sort of space bounty hunter, I remember that name and I called him up and I'm like, hey, can I use this name? Like, just letting you know in case you someday you see it somewhere, it was me. Like, can I use your name? And he's like, yeah, sure, go for it. So now he's like one of the biggest like supporters of like the comic. He's always asking me like, oh, how's it going? Like, where's Tank McGregor going? And like, what are his adventures up to? But yeah, I basically just kind of like stole his name and used it for my own purposes. But then after that, I did have, all I had was 15 pages of dialogue. I didn't have a script with actions, and I didn't have like panel placements. And Kieran, you mentioned that you know where the lines are going to be. I have no idea where the lines are going to be. I had no idea what the page was going to look like. But I do see what conversations were going to be like in my head. I think it's part of the whole film background. So I see it more like just like a stage play, like two people talking. So I knew the dialogue and I knew I had a bunch of like dialogue in me. So I just started writing dialogue and I wrote 15 pages of dialogue and I just had that. And I thought it was pretty funny, pretty interesting, but nothing to it. I did not intend for it to be a comic and I knew it couldn't be a movie or anything. So I just left it there as just a fun thing that I wrote. And then years later, I came back to it, rediscovered it, read it, and I realized, oh, this is actually not terrible. And like I said, I've always drawn more as a hobby. So I just started putting pictures to the drawings. If you read my comic, the very first words in the book are a narration. That's literally the very first words in the script. Like I didn't really change much out of it. The only thing that I've started fleshing out were the actions and what happens during these scenes where people are just talking to each other.
So how difficult for you was the world building, if it ever was difficult? How did you manage to create a world that is totally your own and integrate your influences in it, but maintain that Tank McGregor is yours in your world and not someone else's?
It was a little bit of a balance of trying to, like, whenever I had like a really good idea, then trying to like backtrack and think, did I get that from somewhere? Or like, did I see that on some episode of something and I'm just repurposing it and doing like mental loopholes, jump rope and accidentally stealing it. And the other part is just, it really was just like time. Like I didn't do this fairly quick. It took me like 3 years of starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And I had the benefit of, so I didn't have any sort of deadline or anything. I was just sort of doing it for myself. I would make, say, like 50 pages, and then I'd stop for about a month and go back and look at it. And I'd realize, oh, you know, what would be cool here and over there. And I just keep on adding to it. And over the process of like 4 or 3 years, it just built out that way. You know, I think having had the benefit of time is the way I was able to actually build out a pretty decent universe with its own backstories and lore and rules that I was just having a lot of fun making up myself. And at the same time, when I had a few drafts, like the first draft, I would send it to my friends and some of them would respond and say like, hey, so this planet name, you got that from Star Trek, or hey, you got this from Blade Runner, or like they would like sort of call me out on things that I didn't realize that I was getting from other places. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. And I have to like redo it and basically just kind of surgically make it all my own, that it existed within itself, its own property.
And what about you, Kieran, from the perspective of an illustrator? When you get a script from someone, you kind of have to put it on the page. So how difficult can it be for you with their world building, like translating it onto their words onto the page?
Well, I've been really lucky. Mark kind of, his script is very minimal. This first book, it was just kind of like, I want this to happen and this to happen and this to happen. And he gave me like a few words of dialogue and then said, like, let's see what you got, basically. So I kind of got to just sit and watch like some like old cartoons and movies and like watch old tapes of demolition derbies and things and say, oh, like, how do I want this to look, or how would I draw this? So he didn't give me too much constraints, and he just kind of let me play with it, which was really nice. He gave me like a time period and then said it doesn't have to be exactly that time period. So that kind of gave me a limit to like, oh, like how far do the, like, what age of the cars or whatever. So like I can't go past like 1980 or but it could be any time before then, that kind of thing. And he also, he wanted this Russian monkey, which we thought was a hilarious idea. He only speaks Russian. So we're like, okay, what era is it? Well, if it's earlier, it's going to be USSR and, Soviet. And that's going to be like a whole thing on its own, which we think is hilarious. So with Mark, he gave me a lot of freedom, which is really, really great.
So is Mark, I guess, the first person you worked with professionally with illustrating, or have you worked with other collaborators illustrating? And how has, I guess, what's the difference between working with him and working with other collaborators?
Yeah, so I worked, my first book is with another company. Well, it was originally with Lesser Known. And then we took it in another direction with a different company, but yeah, that was called Condry. That one's called Condry. Mm-hmm. It's a totally different story. It's like a noir, dirty New York City kind of thing. When that was like my first thing I started on, and my writer, excuse me. My writer on that was one of my friends, and he kind of let me play with that too. So that was really great. But it's also, it's very different, but it's still done with watercolor and things like that. So we've built that universe together. And I have like a few different things that I'm working on that are all kind of within that same universe. So once you have like a universe in mind, you kind of like stick to those boundaries. Mm-hmm. But with comics, it's fun to just kind of like expand and see where it kind of leads. So that, with that universe, when I first was given that script, and that had a lot more, there was like, it was pretty deep. He didn't give me like all the information up front, because he was, not keeping it secret, but it was just kind of like, you don't need to know this yet. So when I started drawing it, he was like, that's not what I pictured, but I love it. So let's go with that kind of thing. So luckily I haven't run into too many roadblocks with like being creative or, building these worlds and universes and stuff. Uh-huh. So hopefully, I hope to work in someone else's universe, because I would like that challenge. I just haven't gotten that chance yet.
Uh-huh. And what about you, Ray? How has your experience been collaborating with Mark within lesser known comics versus, I guess, your other experiences with collaborating with people? And it can be in comics or it can be when you used to work in short films.
Well, my collaborations with Mark have been mainly on the, I don't want to say business side of things, but it has been in the more post-production side of things. Tank McGregor, I wrote and illustrated it all myself. I basically already had a finished book when I presented it to Mark. And through Mark, he basically brought it into lesser known comics and put it on the catalog. But it's been super cool meeting everybody who works at lesser known comics and all the other illustrators and all the other writers, and just getting to see everybody's processes and what everybody's got going. It feels very much so much friendlier. Not to say that working in films was unfriendly, but it definitely does feel like it's a business that doesn't want you in there, you know. And even when you have a group of filmmaker friends, you all sort of like are looking out for your own baby, and it's very rare to find a group of people who will ask you about your thing and want to work on your thing and help you make your vision come to life. Most of them are just kind of, I hate to say this, but it feels a little bit like people are kind of looking out for themselves. Mm-hmm. Again, not everybody, but that's some of the experiences I had in the film world, which is why it's so much harder to get stuff off the ground, because you got to be a little bit of a shark and a little bit more cutthroat and a little more outgoing and extroverted, things that I am not. So making a comic was really freeing because I don't have to depend on anyone else. I can write, I can draw. The only thing I outsourced it for was the coloring that was done by someone else. But once I did it and I had a finished book and I kind of broke in, for lack of a better word, into like the comic scene, and I met all these people, it was just so refreshing to have people be excited about something that I made and showing me the stuff that they made and want to help me out of my thing, and it makes me want to help them out in their thing. And it's just it's two different worlds, even though it's like the fabric is the same, which is like storytelling and just like creating interesting worlds. You know, the people are vastly different from my experience.
Mm-hmm. So from what you both have learned over the years, what advice would you offer to other artists? It can be, other illustrators, it can be other writers, just artists in general, pretty much, that you wish someone would have told you when you first started.
Oh, for me, I just wish that I had more feedback other than like, oh, it looks great, because like looking back, I'm like, it doesn't, but I don't know. Like at the time, you never know exactly like what you're doing. And a lot of people like offer their like, congrats or whatever. Like they're excited to see what you've done. And then they just say it looks good and you get no like criticism. And to me, that was pretty difficult, because moving forward, you want to show other people that actually, know what they're doing. And once that happens, like you get like a smack in the face, right? Oh, no, this isn't good enough. Or you really need to work on X, Y, and Z. So, if I had, I don't know, I guess I never put myself in a situation where I thought I was the greatest or anything, but I always knew, and I always know that I can always improve and it can always be better. But it's nice to have like actual conversation and feedback and criticisms and change this or work on that and that kind of thing. And that's like, even now, that's like something that is great to have.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I mean, if I had any advice for people starting out, it would be to not wait for things to happen to kind of make it happen. One of the things that I wish I had known was that I didn't have to be an incredibly skilled artist to make a comic book. I'm not knocking my work. I'm proud of my work. But there was a time where I felt that, well, if my work doesn't look like Todd McFarlane's, or if it doesn't look like Mike Mignola's, that's not good enough to be a comic book or to be out there. And it wasn't until I realized that it's not that my work is bad, it's that it's just its own style. And once I got that through my head, I ended up leaning on that style and making something out of it. And now I'm really proud of the way I create drawings and the way my work looks. And I just waited a long time to realize that. So I would just tell people to not wait. And, if you start something today, that's already like a head start. Then if you had started it tomorrow, you're not going to want to, like, one of the worst things is like realizing that, like, oh, if I'd started this a year ago, I would have been done by now or something, but I waited a year. So I'm glad that I started, and I'm already past that year and thinking, oh, I'm glad I started this 4 years ago or whenever, instead of regretting it. So just not to wait.
So my last question for you two is, what is your idea of success? I ask that because as creators, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue from our art, we're considered failures, or we consider ourselves failures. Many of us will put our dreams and projects on a back burner or give them up altogether because this career path can be highly intimidating and competitive. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
Oh boy.
If I didn't die or get run over by a car, I think I've had a pretty successful day.
Yeah, whenever you wake up in the morning and you're still there, I think it's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, I've always felt successful. Like every time I finish a page or something, it's always like, oh, I finish a drawing. That's success. That's one way to think about it. I think I've said this one other time. I think, it's really, really wonderful to see your name on something physical, and say, oh, I created that. Like whether anyone ever reads it or whatever, it exists and it's in my hands, and that's success to me. And I hope people enjoy it, and I want people to like see it and pick it up and say, oh wow, I like, this was great, and like share in that success. But it doesn't, like, success is such a weird word, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, this doesn't pay my bills. That's not my top concern. I love to do it, and I really enjoy it. And I do have a full-time job that pays the bills, and hopefully, I can swap that and, do this, and this will pay the bills, and that'll be the success that I've been looking for. But again, it's just great to see, someone say, hey, I'll print that for you, or I'll, join my team and we'll work together and we'll build a universe. And that success is really quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree with everything you said. Yeah. It's exactly what you said. Like, I really do. I hadn't really thought about it until you said it, but I really do feel successful every time I finish a page. And I felt success when I finished the book. And then I felt like I was successful when Mark offered to print the book, and put it in his catalog. I thought, and the idea of like money hadn't really crossed my mind. I'm not making any money off of this book yet. Hopefully someday. But yeah, like I'm already over the moon just that it's getting viewed and seen, and the fact that I have a physical embodiment of years of work, a physical product in my hand, that feels pretty successful in itself. And maybe in the future, if I can just do that for a living, then that'll be that success for future Ray, but right now, currently, I do feel pretty successful as it stands.
You know what else? When someone else draws your character, like someone that you created, like, oh man, that's great. That's what a feeling when someone thinks that what you created is cool enough that they did it themselves, and then they pick it up and they show you and they say, look, I drew what you do, and like that's an awesome feeling.
That is an awesome feeling. And it's happened a couple of times with Tank McGregor, with some of the lesser known artists send me some stuff. Doug Knight recently did a fan art of Tank McGregor with the Futurama characters. And he's like Leela is like lighting a cigarette and he's putting his feet in a Bender's body, but it's like a foot warming massager thing. And it's just like this really creative thing. And I'm like, wow, like that's insane. Like I would have never thought someone would like actually, like, clearly this person was looking at my work and trying to get it right, obviously getting it right. But it's so, like you said, it's so satisfying. It's so humbling. And at the same time, it's so flattering. The idea that someone is looking at your work and trying to recreate it because they like it or because they had a really cool idea what to do with it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Is there anything else that all of you wanted to touch on for Tank McGregor or for Death Wish as a whole that I may have missed?
No, Tank McGregor and Death Wish and Goodnight are all on Kickstarter right now. There's 9 days left in the Kickstarter campaign. It's been going really well, really smoothly. And I invite everybody who hasn't heard or is remotely interested in awesome artwork and comic books and all that jazz to go and pay it a visit. At lesser known comics on Kickstarter, and you can follow our work there, and you can follow my work on Tank McGregor Comic on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Instagram, KX Quinn, KXQUINN, and KX Quinn Sketchbook. The sketchbook Instagram will have more of my art and stuff, but I am very bad at posting, so I try to do it as much as possible, but it's just not my thing. Again, physical versus digital. Yeah, I think that's it for me. Yeah.
I'm also having like a crisis on Instagram because like I have my Tank McGregor comic page and I have my personal page, and I don't have like an art page. So I'm like, if I do like a piece of art that I like, but it's not Tank McGregor, should I put it on the Tank McGregor or should I put it on like my personal one along with my dog and my wife? Like, I don't know what to do. So I want to create a new one, but it's like, I don't want to start from scratch. So I'm like just having all these problems that I'm making myself up in my head.
Yeah. I mean, even my sketchbook is like, it's not new. I've had it for over a year, but it probably has like 20 things on it. That's why I keep saying like, oh, go to my other one, which is my personal one. It has pictures of my cat or whatever. And but as you scroll down, you'll see it's all art and other things that I've worked on or built or created or whatever you want to say. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, again, I want to thank the creator of Tank McGregor, Rey Garza, and the illustrator for Death Wish, Kieran Quinn, here to promote batch number 4 with lesser known comics on Kickstarter. I highly recommend our listeners to give the Kickstarter a look, share, and back if they can. All of Reys, Kieran's, and lesser known comics socials alongside the Kickstarter will be listed in this episode details for those who are interested. Again, I am KS Garner, and you have been listening to the Solo Nerd Bird Podcast. Thank you.